Hi, everyone. I'm Justin Beals, CEO and founder of StrikeGraph. Now, if you're a defense contractor handling controlled unclassified information, you're going to need to complete a CMMC Level 2 self-assessment and submit your score to the Supplier Performance Risk System before you can compete for DoD contracts. Now, in this video, I'll walk you through the entire process step by step, from defining your scope to calculating your SPRS score to submitting it in the federal portal. I'll show you exactly what to document, how the scoring works, and how to avoid the false claims risk that can land contractors in serious legal trouble. Let's get started. Before we dive in, a quick reality check. Level 2 applies to contractors handling controlled unclassified information. And here's what the DoD is predicting. About 85% of companies handling controlled unclassified information, or CUI, will need a third-party audit from a C3 PAO. Only about 15% of companies, those working with non-priority CUI, will rely solely on the self-assessment. So what does this mean for you? Treat this self-assessment as a full rehearsal for a C3 PAO audit. The odds are you'll need one. The same documentation, evidence, and scoring you're building now should match exactly what auditors will evaluate later. If you approach it this way, you're not just checking a box. You're building an audit-ready compliance posture. William McBurrow, a CMMC lead assessor, puts it this way. Contractors often put in significant effort to prepare for their initial assessment with no plans for maintaining compliance. Now, since Level 2 aligns with NIST 800-171, it does require ongoing governance, continuous monitoring, plus an annual attestation. Now let's walk through the 5 steps. Step 1, define your scope. Now, step 1 is defining your scope. You need to identify every system, process, facility, and service provider or contractor for you that's handling this controlled unclassified information, as defined in the NARA CUI registry. Follow the data is one of the best pieces of advice I can give around the scope of your compliance. Now, we're going to document the boundary formally in this system security plan report. It will include information about your business, what you do, the people that work there, including diagrams and asset inventories with version control on what CUI data is touching. Now, here's where a lot of companies get tripped up. Service providers. Now, McBurrow calls this one of the most common scoping blind spots. But let's say you have a managed service provider and they have administrative access to systems that are storing, processing, or transmitting CUI data. Those services and services providers are in scope. And many contractors assume the provider is outside their environment or assume they're compliant because the vendor said so. So what's the solution? Well, CMMC does have a document called the Shared Responsibility Matrix. And this can include different companies, providers, vendors, specifying what their role and access level is in which the systems that they interact. Now, how their activities function inside these systems will impact specific CMMC controls. One more distinction. If you're only working with federal contract information, FCI and not CUI, you're looking at Level 1, not Level 2. Clarifying this early prevents overscoping. Step 2, run a gap analysis. Now, in Step 2, we're going to compare all your current practices, operations, processes, how you run your company, against all 110 requirements in the NIST SP 800-171 list of requirements. Now, we'll use the Department of Defense assessment methods from NIST SP 800-171A to examine, interview, and test to evaluate whether each control is fully implemented. And we're going to take just a second here and get some of our language aligned. What is a control? To us, a control is a habit, procedure, or process that happens at your organization that you own. That habit, procedure, or process is what you map onto the requirements. Everything from NIST 800-171A to SOC 2s to ensure that you're meeting that particular part of the requirements. It's what the auditor looks at, and it's what they test. Now, for each of the requirements in the NIST 800-171A, record whether it's met, not met, or not applicable. And you need to capture the findings in a gap analysis template, and this makes for a baseline. Now, of course, you can use StrikeRef's free gap analysis template or our interactive self-assessment tool to walk you through this systematically. Step 3, gather evidence and remediation plans. Step 3 is where the real work is going to happen. For every control, we're going to gather artifacts or data that prove compliance. One auditor once told me that you need both a design specification and a sample of execution. For example, we may have a control that states we're going to do something. We may then have a policy that is evidence we've designed how to do it. We might have records of training people to do it, and then system logs or screenshots that it was done. Each of these evidences map directly to the control, and then the control maps to the requirement and assessment objective. Now, when you find deficiencies, either in the control or the evidence you're going to collect, you need to document them in a plan of action and milestones. And here's what's really important. Not every control or evidence is plan of action and milestones eligible. Only requirements listed in Title 32 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Section 170.21, can be placed on a POA&M. To qualify for conditional Level 2 status, you must earn at least 80% of the points available. You then have 180 days to remediate and validate your open plan of action and milestone items, or your conditional status expires. And each closed item requires a documented plan of action and milestones closeout assessment confirming the control is now met. Step 4, calculate your score. So in step 4, we're going to calculate your SPRS score using the Department of Defense's assessment methodology. The CMMC is a little unique. It's a quantitative scoring methodology, and not a lot of security audits work that way. Let's talk about how it begins. The starting point is 110 points. You get a perfect score right from the beginning. That's the maximum number of points you can earn. So you'll begin with 110 points. And of course, this represents a full implementation of all 110 NIST 800-171 requirements. Now, CMMC utilizes a deduction system. For each of the requirements in the framework, we're going to deduct points from that 110. Now, the tricky bit is that there are different point values for different parts of the framework. 5 points for the highest impact security requirements, 3 points for moderate impact security requirements, and only 1 point for lower weighted security requirements. Let me demonstrate this. Let's say 2 of the 5-point requirements were not met. We'd go from 110 points to 100 points. And then 3 3-point controls were not met. We'd subtract another 9 points to be at 91. And then 1 1-point control was not met. Will end at 90 points, having started at 110 points. Now, your score can go negative, all the way down to negative 203 if nothing is implemented. Now, I have an important warning for you on doing this scoring work. You need to score conservatively. Overstated compliance creates a serious problem during audit. Keeping your system security plan tightly connected to supporting evidence and documenting if you're uncertain whether a requirement is fully met or the control was operated or you have the right evidence, that should go in your plan of action and milestones. As Micah Spieler, StrikeGraph's head of product, explains, when organizations conduct their self-assessments through StrikeGraph, their scores tie directly into control and evidence mappings. That means there's a really clean audit trail from the score to the control to the evidence of operation. Step 5, submit your results in the SPRS. Now, step 5, it means that we need to submit the results of our scoring through the Department of Defense's Supplier Performance Risk System Portal, SPRS, which you access via the PIEE platform. Getting access. First, you're going to need access. In PIEE, request the SPRS Cyber Vendor User role. Confirm that the correct cage codes appear under your account. Next, we're going to prepare the entries. Before you log in, have this data ready. Your system security plan title, version, and date, your scope statement, your overall score, and any plan of action and milestone items with target completion dates, and finally, your cage code or codes. Next, we're going to enter the results. In the SPRS system, you'll record assessment date, your calculated score, assessment type, level 2 self, the scope description, the cage codes, the SSP metadata, and if you're using plan of action and milestones, your projected completion date. Next, we have an annual affirmation. Your affirming official must submit the required annual affirmation in SPRS. Many teams do this immediately after filing results, then calendar the yearly renewal to reaffirm. Next, we're going to validate and retain. Recheck every number against your SSP and evidence index. Mismatches trigger scrutiny. Update your SPRS when plan of action and milestone items close, and retain your submission records and supporting evidence for at least 6 years in case of later review. Now, your score is now visible to Department of Defense contracting officers. They will check this before awarding contracts. Section 3, False Claims Act Risks. Now, I'd like to be direct about something that trips up contractors. The legal exposure with CMMC is significant. When you submit an SPRS score, you're making a representation to the federal government. If that representation is false, intentionally or through reckless disregard for the truth, you're potentially liable under the False Claims Act. Now, this means civil penalties up to $27,000 per false claim, plus treble damages. Criminal penalties for willful violations, debarment from future government contracting. Qui tam provisions mean your own employees can report discrepancies and receive a percentage of recovered funds. Now, how can you protect yourself? First, document everything. Your SSP, your evidence, your scoring rationale, all of it with version control. The second is to start conservatively. If you're unsure whether a control is fully met, mark it not met with a plan of action and milestones. A realistic remediation plan is legally defensible. Claiming full compliance when you know you're not is fraud. Keep assessments current. If your security posture changes, update your SPRS score. And finally, retain records for 6 years. The government can audit you long after submission. As I've told businesses, the goal isn't a perfect score. The goal is an accurate score you can defend. Section 4, Common Pitfalls. Before I wrap up, let me flag the mistakes I see most often. Overscoping or underscoping. Map your CUI data flows in detail before your assessment. Both overscoping and underscoping waste time and money. The next is incomplete evidence. You need current artifacts, policies, logs, screenshots tied directly to each practice, not what you had last year, what's operating today. Incomplete evidence can put you in a dangerous situation. The third thing is waiting too long. A lot of companies that underestimate level 2 rigor wait until a contract requires certification, then discovers that the process takes months. If you're 6 months from renewal on contract eligibility and just starting plan of action and milestone remediation, you're in a business critical situation already. The final mistake is thinking you can buy your way out. I've seen companies pay $50,000 to $100,000 for consultants who will drop generic templates and leave. The consultant won't eliminate the work. The work is yours to do. That is who is becoming compliant. Instead, the consultant gave you a starting point. You still have to implement all of these controls and track them for your organization. Well, that's the complete process, from scope definition to SPRS submission. If you want to automate this workflow, the gap analysis, the evidence mapping, the scoring calculations, the system security plan, the SPRS score, and the plan of action and milestones, StrideGraph's free self-assessment tool walks you through every requirement and generates a ready-to-share report. I'll link it in the description, along with our free templates for gap analysis, POA&Ms, and system security plans. Subscribe to more CMMC guidance as we approach a greater and greater implementation. And if you have any questions, drop them in the comments. Thanks for watching.